In this video, I'm going to show you how I hand knit a fingerless mitten or fingerless glove. This mitten is knitted from the finger down and increase around the thumb holes and continue to reduce until the wrist. I started from the ribbing and cast on 30 stitches with the worsted weight yarn and 5mm needle. You can use any stretchy cast on. I use a regular long tail cast on here for 30 stitches, and then I start knitting the ribbing. I started with back and forth knitting for 1 by 1 ribbing, 1 knit, 1 purl, 1 knit, 1 purl, and after a few rows I connected together with the circular needle to be round knitting. It is easier to start circular knitting this way, and then you can use a yarn tail to finish up the first few rows that's not connected in a circle. To knit in a round, I'm using the magic loop method. After a few rows of back and forth knitting, I pull the circular knitting needle from the middle of the knitting, so the knitting is separate into half and half. I have 15 stitches in the front and 15 stitches in the back. Put the two needles parallel to each other and pull the back needle, and we can start knitting the stitch in the front of the needle. And just follow the ribbing pattern, knit the knit and purl the purl. So it becomes a 1 by 1 ribbing, or if you want you can have 2 by 2 ribbing. It's up to you. If you are not familiar with magic loop, it's very easy. When you knit to the end of the first needle, just pull the needle in the back so the two needles are parallel to each other, and turn the whole work around. Now you can pull out the needle in the back and continue knitting the other half. After knitting about 5 rows, you can try it on your hand and see if it's the length you like. I have it around the knuckle area, so that's what I like for this ribbing part. The second part, we are going to knit plain stockinette stitch until the beginning of the thumb hole. For the first few rows, there is an opening because we knit back and forth at the first few rows. You can sew it close with the yarn tail. Now we just continue knitting all the way until the thumb hole increase. And that's what it looks like after a few rows of knit stitch. You can try it on as you need to see if it's right length to start thumb hole increase. Now you can see it's ready to increase for the thumb hole. You can wrap the knitting around your thumb to decide how many stitches you will need for the increase. And in my case, I have about 10 stitches. One way to increase the stitches is by the backwork loop method, like I'm showing. You just twist the yarn to make a loop and place it back to the needle. You can increase 10 stitches this way. The second way to increase is a knitted cast on. You turn the work around and increase from the back side. And you just knit in between the first 2 stitches and place the stitch back to the needle. It creates a sturdy cast on. After you cast on 10 stitches or stitches that's enough to cover your thumb, you can continue knitting. We can continue with the knit stitch all around for about 3 rows, and then we can start to decrease. You can check if your thumb can fit in the hole. You can try it on and see if it's long enough. When you reach the widest part of the hand, usually there's a bone there, then you can start decreasing. For me, it's about 3 or 4 rows. I decrease the middle 2 stitches of the 10 stitches, so you will be 5th and 6th stitches. I do it with the knit 2 together. Because we increased 10 stitches, so we have to decrease 10 stitches. And I decrease every other row for the first 5 stitches and every row for the other 5 stitches. So the first row is the decrease, and then 1 row of plain knitting without decrease, 1 row of decrease, 1 row without decrease until 5 stitches are decreased. And I always decrease the center 2 stitches of the 10 stitches. You can place marker to show the 10 stitches if it's easier for you. After the decreasing, you can try it on, see if it's long enough. You might need a few rows of the plain stitch before the ribbing. When the mitten reaches your wrist, then it's long enough to start the ribbing part. I use the regular 1x1 ribbon to match the beginning of the knitting, and it's just 1 knit 1 purl, 1 knit 1 purl. I have about 11 or 12 rows of the ribbon, and it's about 2 inches. Try it on and see if that's the length you want, and then you can start any type of stretchy bind off. There are many different stretchy bind off, such as the tubular bind off. I'm doing the easier one. I just knit and purl in pattern, and after I have 2 stitches in my right needle, I knit or purl together. That creates a stretchy bind off. You can see it gets very stretchy, but it also flares up a little bit. Now the only thing left is the ribbon in the thumb hole. We have to pick up the 10 stitches and a few more stitches. I pick up 4 extra stitches around the palm side, and we can decrease it to 12 stitches so it reduces the holes in the corner. Just pick up 14 stitches evenly, and then we will reduce 2 stitches in the next round. After picking up all the stitches, reduce the stitch in the corner with the knit two together, and we continue with the ribbon pattern: purl stitch, knit stitch, purl stitch, knit stitch, all the way around. And don't forget to reduce the last two stitches on the other side, so the final stitch will be 12. When we go to the last two stitches, we just purl it together and one stitch reduced. And then we follow the ribbon pattern for several rows. In my case, I have about 5 rows. We can try it on again and see if that's the length you like. If everything is okay, we can bind it off with any stretchy bind off method, or you can use the one we just did for our wrist. To bind off, I follow the pattern and knit the first stitch, purl the second stitch, and then purl the two stitches together. And I knit the next stitch and knit both stitches together through the back loop. You can try different stretchy bind off method. You can also use the standard bind off, but it might be a little bit tight. Just keep repeating the steps and you will have a stretchy bind off. Finally, we can cut the yarn and weave in the end and use the yarn end to close any holes around the thumb area. Now you are done. Go make another matching one. It should only take 1 or 2 days for each glove. Thank you for watching.